Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom. On today's episode, we're going to tackle how to choose and use your lawyer. Welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura.
It's a very simple introduction because we're really just going to be talking about how do you choose a lawyer, but also really importantly, which we've noticed heaps of people don't know about, there are different ways to use a lawyer.
Yeah, I think people sometimes spend more time wondering which vacuum cleaner they'll get than they do
On what lawyer.
on what lawyer. And you have choices. Lawyers are just as different as vacuum cleaners.
Yes. That is hilarious that you described lawyers as vacuum cleaners.
Well,
I won't go there,
up.
Mum. Yes, okay, they suck. No.
Oh, my God, I didn't think of that.
So there's lovely, lovely lawyers out there. So what we're going to talk about, Mum, is something that we talk about a lot on our webinars. If you're interested in coming along to our webinar, definitely go onto our website, www.thedivorcecourse.com.au, and you can click webinars and reserve your seat. It's free. Come along. We'd love to see you. You get to actually see our faces. But what we have noticed with a lot of people is a lot of people think there's only one way to use a lawyer, and that is you go there, you give them their information, and the lawyer does it.
Yeah. I had a nurse describe it to me once like going in for an operation.
Mm-hmm.
You pay all your money and then you're pretty well unconscious for most of it.
Yes.
And someone just pushes your trolley through the processes or pushes your bed through processes. But that's not right. That's not the way it can be.
Yeah.
You have to do it when it's a doctor and you're going to surgery, but you don't have to do it when you're using a lawyer.
So that is what we like to call the first class approach to using a lawyer.
Yeah.
And pretty much everyone to start with thinks that's how it's done.
Yep.
But the problem with first class is it's blimmin' expensive. So look, Mum, how many of your clients in the past, percentage-wise, were used you as a first class lawyer, like as in everything? You do everything.
Yeah, I think they all pretty well wanted me to be a first-class lawyer, but I made them do stuff themselves, keep the costs down.
Yeah.
Yes, I think the difference with first-class, that analogy with the first-class lawyer is you don't know what the outcome's going to be and you don't know what they know. So there's no real checks and balances.
And I try to explain it in this analogy, and I use it a lot, is for the first-class lawyer, they're in the pilot seat
of a plane
in a locked room that you can't see, and you're sitting in first class, which is very luxurious and less stressful, and you're not dealing with stinky feet and gross toilets, and you're enjoying your life and you're getting along, and you're going to your destination of getting finally divorced and property settlement and parenting orders done. But the problem with first class is, yes, it's great, it doesn't stink, it's stressful, but then you land. And that's when you get your orders at that destination. It could be something completely different that you didn't want, and it still costs you a lot of money because you weren't directing the pilot.
And worse than that, if they do get to the right destination, when you hop off, you'll see all those stinky feet people from economy, and they got there for thousands of dollars less.
Yes, yes. That is that, and that's the thing, right? You're all going to the same destination. You all want to get your property orders and your parenting orders, your consent orders sorted and done and dusted. And look, if you're willing to pay to get someone to do that, the only pitfalls you need to watch out for, like you said, Mum, is you need to make sure your lawyer knows
what they're doing,
what they need to know. Because, Mum, you did say to me when people come into a meeting with you, they're telling you their story and you're thinking in your head about what?
I listen to their story and I'm applying in my mind what they tell me to the law, to cases. Okay. So I do listen. I try to control the talk a little bit. But yes, I'm basically in the back of my mind going, oh, that's a 75 two-factor, or, oh, yes, Rob's case. Oh, yes, oh, you were a step-parent for your child. Oh, Rob's case, that'll be well.
Okay.
So I'm thinking all of those things.
You're trying to figure
processing it as you tell the story.
So you're thinking of cases, the Family Law Act, section whatever, 79 factors, but all of that. You're thinking of all of that while they're telling you their story. But and that happens in any way that you go through this, using your lawyer. But if you aren't educated and you yourself don't know a bit about this, and your lawyer doesn't ask you, say, for example, I don't know.
An inheritance.
The lawyer doesn't ask you about it and you don't tell them. What happens? You miss out?
That's right. That's right. Hopefully, in the course of that of your discussion and giving instructions, your lawyer does take instructions about every little thing, but some things are really off the wall, like very different, and it may not come up. You know?
So when we're talking in property settlement, and we do this in our course, we talk you through the contributions before, during and after, and non-financial contributions and future need factors and all of this that comes into the percentages.
Yes.
And we've got some great episodes on that if you'd like to listen to, or you can do it in the course. So you guide everybody through that. And I remember as you were guiding us through it while we were recording it, I was like, oh, I never told my lawyer about that. You know,
yes.
So there are things that I know that our members have written to us and said, well, because I did that, I told my lawyer about it, and they were like, oh, great, I didn't ask you about that. So that's a problem with having a first class lawyer and treating it as first class, and you not getting too involved. Stuff gets missed.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that you are the expert on your life. You're the expert on your marriage, and you might tell the story as the things that you see are important because you're the expert on your life. But unless you also educate yourself a little bit about the law, you may leave out important things as factors that, you know, that should be included and would result in a different outcome.
And to be fair, when you're going through a divorce, you're going to the lawyer for the first time, you are an emotional wreck. Unless you've got your A game on, you know, you're not thinking about financial stuff usually. You're thinking about he did this or she did that, and then this happened and it was horrible, and then this door got closed and then this happened. So you're not even thinking about those kind of things. And if you could easily forget to not mention something.
You easily forget. You're not able to be strategic when you're got these big emotions, you know.
Have you ever had anybody forget to tell you something? And you find out later and go, ooh.
No.
Oh, because you're a good lawyer? Okay. No?
Well, do you know what? I do remember we had a practice in another country town, and I went up one time for a visit with a client, and within 20 minutes, I realised that this was an horrendous domestic violence situation, a manipulative and controlling situation, and was able to ask the questions to extract that information and get instructions. I think that the younger lawyer missed the cues.
Right.
To be fair, the client was astonished that she was in a family violence situation because of it was control. But yeah, I think I hope I haven't missed any.
Yeah.
When I do the affidavits for court or any case outline, I go through the sections of the Act. And I often say this, don't get too fancy. That is, even though I've been doing law in family law for over 30 odd years, I still go back to the sections of the Act and put the relevant headings. And then if I have missed it, it didn't come up in conversation, when the client gets it and I go, inheritances, there were no inheritances, they'll go, oh, yes, there was.
Yes.
And then we can put it in.
Great.
And if you educate yourselves, if our listeners educate themselves, they will know then which things are important and which aren't. Can I tell you a little story?
Please do.
I was on a family law steering committee here in Brisbane.
Steering committee?
Yes, kind of like a consultative group.
Right.
Where they had solicitors, barristers and members of the court. We had a couple of sessions all together.
How many lawyers does it take to steer a bus? That's what it sounds like. Anyway, yeah, go. Yeah.
Well, we'd conducted a survey with a survey company. And the guy was providing his results. And they'd asked 20 questions. And he said, we got to 20. It was before electronic stuff. Got to 20 and we had a bit of space left at the bottom of the page.
Right.
And so we said, anything else you'd like to tell us?
Yeah.
And he said, we couldn't believe it. They were hard copy, pages and pages stapled on the back of people just telling their story.
Wow.
And, it was down to Tupperware and he did this and she did. And I don't think, and what they found was that even if they had won in court, if they didn't feel like the court knew the whole story, then they didn't feel like justice was done.
Right.
So, and I tell you that story because when you go to talk to a lawyer, there is a big urge to spew it all out.
Tell them everything. Well, you're wasting a little bit of time and money on that. And a little bit.
Well,
$600 an hour.
So and so you don't know how to target in on what you're telling them. So I encourage people listening, Google Family Law Act, AUSLII, AUSLII is the best searchable way of doing it. Have a look at your sections that are relevant to children and property, and then you can zoom in on the information you need to give your lawyer.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So because if you go in and you just give them everything, that you either have to be in there for 5 hours and the lawyer sifts through everything, or you don't give them everything and you only have an hour and you give them what you think is relevant. But I have realized a lot of people out there don't actually know what is relevant and what the court cares about and what the court doesn't care about. And there's a lot of things that people breaking up care about, like cheating and, all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to court, they're like, we don't care about that. What's relevant are these issues. So what you're saying is if you educate yourself and you learn just reading it, going, oh, okay, the court cares about this, this and this, this, this and this, then okay, I should tell my lawyer this, this, and this, 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 and this. So then you don't have an accident of not finding out about something, but you also don't have the accident of them eventually finding it out, but spending $1 million just to have that big, long discussion with them. And that, I guess, takes us into that step in, step out way to use your lawyer where you're educated, you know what to do, the basics, and then your lawyer kind of guides you. Is that what's...
Yeah, I think that's a good scenario. So back on the analogies, we're doing a lot of them. If you've got someone comes in to do your bathroom, for instance, okay, and they're at so much an hour and they could do the whole lot, or you could be their labourer and you might carry some tiles and go and buy the sink yourself and all of these.
Well, you could rip out the bathroom. You could smash all the that fun stuff where you demolish the bathroom. You could do that. Yeah. You don't need to be extra smart to demolish a bathroom.
And that will reduce the costs of the plumber, he or she coming in and doing the plumbery stuff, the hard stuff, and then you can do the painting. And that's step in, step outs like that. So you normally would do your, first of all, go and find out where you stand. That's what I say. And that's a good opportunity to look at that lawyer and say, do I like them or not? Do they know their stuff or not? And then you might, for instance, you do all the documents that show, getting copies of bank statements and things that you're going to give to your other party. Say, I'll do that. I know how to, do Word. I can do hyperlinks. I'll collect all of that. Don't you worry about that. And when I've got it all done, I'll give you the link and then,
you can do the rest.
You can do the rest. So you're using the lawyer for just that step. And then you might say you had an interim hearing, a little hearing, and you take a lawyer for that because you probably need that if you're arguing a defendant hearing. And then at the end of it, you can say to your lawyer, and this is what we encourage people to do, is say, do you know what? I can handle between now and the next time we go to court. So I'll contact you 2 weeks out and I'll handle all these ridiculous letters about, is it 9 o'clock or 9:15, and you haven't shown me this bank statement. So if you know what the law is, you can do those sort of easy things. You can do that ripping out the bathroom and carrying up the tiles. And when you've got to a point where it's getting too tricky for you, or it's coming up to a hearing, then you can get back with say to your lawyer, can you come back on the record now? Can you do the next 2 weeks with me or for me? And that way, I think there's lawyers who don't agree with it. And there are lawyers who go, I've heard some of our members say, he said, if I'm going to be in it, I'll be in it 100% and I'm doing all of it. And I said, well, I hope you said, well, I'm sorry, I'll go somewhere else. But this step in, step out is actually encouraged by the court now.
Okay. And I think, and if you go back to the plane analogy, you're the co-pilot. You're sitting, and then when it comes to stormy weather or landing, you refer to the pilot because you don't have those skills. But sitting in an airplane, flying in the sky, just cruising along, you can do that.
Yeah.
You can do that. And if you've got a little bit of the education, it can be a smarter way. And you can say, oh, by the way, pilot, we've just gone a little bit off course. I've just noticed. I've looked at the map. Can we steer back in? You know?
That's right.
And it's not. And I think, people think, oh gosh, getting divorced and doing property settlement, children's matters, that you'd have to know law inside and out. It's so complex. But really, a lot of it, as I've discovered over time, and a lot of our members have discovered, you can do it, a lot of it yourself.
Yeah.
A lot of it yourself. And not everybody ends up in court either. So, you can go and see the lawyer, find out where you stand, do a lot of the work yourself, help them with getting them to help you with negotiations and mediations, but you don't go to court and you settle outside of court.
Well, the court has a big emphasis now on mediations. And so I think more than any time probably in the history of the court, you have a better chance of reaching a resolution at a mediation without having to go all the way through the court process to trial.
So do you think there's some lawyers that don't like it when they do the step out? Why do you think some lawyers don't like step in, step out?
I do not know.
Is it because they just want money?
Well, maybe they've got some sort of personality thing where they have to have control. But it beats me because I would rather... Well, I don't want to do that sort of work. I hated that side of it. So boring.
Photocopying disclosure or emailing links. Things and emailing links.
And so that's not what we went to law school for. What we went to law school for was to do the legal stuff, do the hearings, do the letters of offer, go to trials, just negotiate in letters. But yes, this boring stuff, and my age, I guess, but a lot of lawyers are much less computer savvy than their clients, And
the cost to doing some of this stuff is so expensive. Well, legal fees to do a photocopying.
The secretaries.
It's like 50 cents a page or something stupid.
That's right. And your personal assistants usually do it.
Yeah.
It's not lawyers. So a lot of them have an hourly rate of their own and they're not lawyers. So yes, it just depends on your appetite for doing it.
Yes.
But you can sit there and pull all of that information, usually off the internet, and have it,
ready to go.
One weekend when you haven't got the kids, just get it all done. You'll need it at some stage. And you'll feel so good when you finally know everything. Like if you've been on the run with a relationship going south and trying to run a house, do your job, maybe have kids. There are things you won't really have kept on top of. And as Pedro said, you need to understand the old system and set up your new systems, and you'll feel so good.
Well, and I think when you don't know something, one, you don't know what you don't know.
That's right.
And two, it can stress you out. Like I know we've talked about what ifs and turning them to so what's. The best way to turn a lot of these what ifs that you have about court and turning them to so what's is knowing what the process is, what the stage is, what the court cares about. And I think that if you're stressing and just it's so overwhelming, if you can have some step play in the process, if you know what's happening, what's coming up next. I didn't know that mediation was a thing. And which is hilarious because I was a Queensland mediation champion in high school.
And I've been doing mediation since 1994.
I know, but I didn't know that was part of the process. I didn't know that. And I didn't know when that was coming up. I didn't even understand what disclosure was. I got emails from my lawyer saying, send me a bank statement. So I'd send it. And I wasn't being proactive. It was all haphazard. It was constant. It was like a crazy roller coaster ride with a blindfold on. And I would have been a million times less stressed. My hair would have been 100% less grey if I'd known, okay, this is what happens next. And this is what they're looking for. And this is what I should be doing. I would have felt so much better.
Well, also, too, you would know how far along the track you are.
Yeah.
And, I always say, again, it's turning into women things again, but it's kind of like labour pains.
I was about to say, so I was giving birth to my first daughter and I hadn't done the whole, what do you call it, the pregnancy thing?
You hadn't done the whole book.
The whole course on how to give birth because she came quite early, bless her cotton socks, so she's completely fine now. But she came really early. I didn't tell anyone I was in labour because I thought I'd peed the bed. Turns out it was my birth. Broke. And so I asked Mum to go get the book thinking I'd have time in labour to read it. And I remember asking the midwife, the only thing I had learnt was they had these little pictures of the phases of your pain as you went through it. And I said, which picture am I up to? Am I up to messy haired, upset lady face yet? Like how far through this am I? And when will I get to the end? I just wanted to know where I was in the process. I wanted the book, Mum, so I could read it and know what was coming next. And when I had my second child, I knew what was going to happen. It was way less stressful because in that moment, you're like, how long am I going to be in this pain for? And with divorce, it's the same thing. Yeah. How long am I going to be going through this? But if you know the steps, if you educate yourself, listen to our podcast, do our course, you know, okay, well, the next step is going to be this. And if mediation fails, this is what happens next. And this is what the disclosure I need to give. And this is what happens if they don't give disclosure. And all your what ifs go away.
Yeah. And you see where you are at. And every stage, even though it's a big pain, at least you say, all right, but I'm moving forward.
Yes.
And you can see your trajectory.
Yes.
So I've always talked to people about the 4-step process and just given them an overview of how the court looks at properties, just so they can see.
But I think a lot of lawyers
holds.
don't.
Yeah.
You just walk in and you walk out and go, what did I just do then? What happened?
Yes. And why?
And why?
I think that's the thing. You know why things are being done.
Yes. Yeah. And again, as you've said, Mum, if you understand all those people that wrote and felt cheated even though they'd had a trial, if you understand the Family Law Act, if you understand what judges are looking for, if you understand the rules, you're more likely to settle because you're like, I think you've had this before where you've had clients whose exes don't have lawyers and they're just unrealistically holding out and it doesn't settle because they don't understand the law.
I've had that. And I've had that also with people who come in and they are adamant that this is going to happen in their property settlement and they're not budging. And if they can have if I have a serious talk with them about the prospects of that point being successful or not, people can give up if something's unrealistic. They can go, oh, that sucks. I really hate that. But, thanks for telling me now that it's not going to help me, rather than waiting until
we get to court.
Yeah.
And they say, well, that's not legally allowed, or you're not entitled to that because of X, Y, Z.
And that comes back to know where you stand.
Yeah. So that's step in, step out, and we will maybe talk about it a little bit more. But so the lawyer does some of the work for you and you do the rest of the work. How do you find a lawyer to do step in, step out, Mum? You're invited to our free webinar. Whether you're stuck at the beginning of deciding to divorce or you're struggling to find your way through the legal jargon and fear of the unknown of the legal process, we are here to empower you to take control. Join us to learn what steps you can take, followed by a live Q&A where you get Lynn, my amazing mum, and family law accredited specialist to answer your questions. All you have to do is go to www.thedivorcecourse.com.au and click on Reserve My Seat. Register now for our free webinar to help you make the best decision for your future. We'll see you there. Hurry, spaces are limited, so don't miss out. Register today. How do you find a lawyer to do step in, step out, Mum? Like, what do you ask? What do you ask?
Ask them if they'll do step in, step out. Most people sort of understand that.
Yeah.
And explain to them if they don't know. If they don't know what it is, they probably don't do it. But you need to say to them things like, I will only need you for the court appearances and if I get in strife or if something comes through, but I'd like you to stay off the record for the other side and I'll come and talk to you when I need some help with things. And then maybe if you end up in court or if you want to be represented at a mediation, then they can come on board. And that kind of, if they won't do that, if they want 100% control of the case, then they're not the lawyer for you.
And I think, if you do want first-class lawyer, then go for it, but keep an eye on the ball. If you don't want first class because, you want to be in a little bit control, the bonus of that is the costs. Because if you have a manipulative and controlling ex and you're bombarded with legal letters, and you can listen to that episode where we talk you through some strategies on that, every letter they write to your lawyer costs you money. Every letter.
It costs a lot of money because not just the cost to read it, and like it could be a long letter, but also then your lawyer needs to send it to you with some advice. You give instructions, then your lawyer has to respond back to them with a letter. And so you're playing ping pong with letters. And none of them just costs for one letter. It's 2 letters at a minimum, possibly 3.
And what's that roughly? Around
Well,
$200?
Yep, I'd say so.
$50 a letter?
And that's only if they're short.
Right.
Yeah.
So in this situation, if you do have a manipulative and controlling and they are sending letters all the time and it's costing you $50 a pop just for the lawyer to read it, let alone to respond and talk to you and ask what they want to do, you could say, hey, can we do the step in, step out? I don't want to rack up my legal fees, because that is a classic tactic for narcissists and high manipulative and controlling people to run you out of legal fees so you run out in the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I think I need a disclaimer here. That $50 to read a letter, that's just an estimate, like a thing.
Yeah.
Because most lawyers charge on 6-minute units.
Okay.
And if their hourly rate then is $500, then 6 minutes is 1/10 of an hour. So that's $50.
Right.
But they will then charge $50 for each of those 3 letters. That's $150 plus GST.
Jeez.
So $165. And it might have only been a very brief letter, because most lawyers charge for a 6-minute or part thereof. So if it goes into 7 minutes, there are some firms who, and it's quite within their rights with the cost agreement, to charge you 2 units for that. So that'd be $100.
I had to point this out, Mum. It is the weirdest metric. Like 6-minute units
is 1/10 of an hour. It makes the maths easier.
Weird. Anyway,
been always like that.
So what you've got to be so careful in racking up those bills and keeping an eye on that.
And ask for bills every week, because with the current. Everyone's got accounting software now, or I think nearly everyone does, and all they have to do is push a button.
Yes.
In the old days, you'd wait until the file was about 6 inches thick, and then you'd send it off to a special firm to cost it.
Oh, really?
And then you'd send your client a bill for $30,000.
Holy.
Or whatever. So you can get a cost every week, a bill every week.
And then it's safer and better for you to know where you're up to.
Yes. Look, if you're having
a bill at the end.
If you're having a birthday party for someone and you've got to spend extra money next week, well, don't call your lawyer. Don't call your lawyer for that week.
Unless you really, really need to.
Yeah, that's right.
So, I do think people put their head in the sand with lawyers and they just go, well, this is the process. And it does seem to be a weird profession where it's not like they've got their prices on the walls or, a menu. And because it is, I guess, there's so many different elements to what a lawyer does, it would be hard to, but you've got to try and get as much transparency as possible.
And that hourly rate is the key.
Okay.
To find out what an hourly rate is. Sometimes, I was just thinking about our knee operation. We were talking about gold class. At least with this one, with step in, step out, you can say, hang on a minute, I'll pay for the anaesthetic this week.
Yeah.
and then next week we'll do the knee.
Yes. Yeah. And it is, look, it's really, and particularly if you are the one that's been, frozen out of the property for the moment and you are fighting to get that property back, but at the moment you're struggling with money, you have to be really clever about these things.
Yep. You have to be realistic. Yeah. Often, it's really sad sometimes. Often people have been like working in the business and then suddenly they're on the outside looking in. And I know we shouldn't do it, but there still is a feeling amongst some of the older lawyers, not me, male lawyers, that the men should continue the business and, and that just because the woman who raised the kids and did all the books for the business, that she doesn't sort of somehow count.
That's terrible.
We've got a long way to go, but we've come a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. So the third way you can use a lawyer. The third way you can use a lawyer is the legal look.
Yes.
So I used to call it legalised, but Mum, you said that sounds too much like legalised marijuana.
It does.
So we're changing it to legal look.
Yep.
And we have a lot of our members do this legal look. And can you talk us through what the legal look way is to use a lawyer?
So the legal look way is kind of you're riding the bike, but they're the training wheels. So you do the work and then you check with the lawyer.
Right.
To make sure the orders are correct or what you're asking is feasible. So you get a step-in, step-out lawyer on your side, give them a retainer, and then they stay completely in the background and you do everything and then you go in to get the work checked.
Right.
That's really helpful.
You would write your consent orders or you'd write what your proposed orders are. You would do all the negotiating.
Yep.
But you see them first to find out where you stand.
Yes.
So you see them once to find out where you stand.
Yes, you do.
And then you see him the second time
when you've drafted your orders.
Once you've got your orders.
And sometimes if you end up in mediation, but like in mediation, there's quite a lot of pressure, I guess, to finalise things. And I'd encourage you then to ring that lawyer when you're in the mediation, just to run a few things by them. They've got your case. You've taken in your sheets. If you take statements and chronologies that we talk about in the course they've got the basic history, and you should be able to ring them, because I do that with my clients. When I used to say to them, if you want to do mediation, fine, that's good. But like if you get stuck, I'll be here. I'm working in the office today, so give me a call and I'll try and get back to you. And that way they just saved a lot of money. If you take a lawyer in and sit in the court, sit at a mediation all day, and some lawyers, you're paying half the mediator's fees already. If you take a solicitor, in some cases a barrister, then it's like eye-watering. You're paying like $1,500 an hour.
Oh my gosh!
To sit in there and
to fight with your ex, or to negotiate with your ex.
And you used to do that for free.
Oh my gosh!
So legal eyes is where you educate yourself enough to be able to run your own case, but you keep someone who's got the experience.
Yeah, what you've said before, Mum, is for the legal look, you always get the lawyer to look before you sign anything.
Absolutely. And that's why I mentioned the mediation thing. So, just go and get them to see in case there's hidden traps. Because if, like I said, the Family Law Act has been around a long time, and we know some of the tricks and traps that can happen. And the lawyer for your ex is not going to put in the protections for you that your lawyer might put in for you. Like you might want to sign something that says that you're going to transfer the house to them and they're going to give you money, and you go, oh, that's great. That's exactly what I wanted. But when you look at the document, it says that. But does it say, what if he can't get the money? When's this happening? What's the default orders that need? So you need a lawyer who thinks like a lawyer to look over your orders.
Yeah, you don't want a lawyer that doesn't think like a lawyer. That would be bad.
So the word devil's advocate means devil's lawyer. And we're kind of, but what if he does this? And what if house prices go down? What are you going to do? And so make sure the orders are comprehensive so that they're enforceable and they're real. You can count on them.
Can you do this step in, step out, or legal look if the other side has lawyers? Can you still basically represent yourself and say, I'm representing myself, or my lawyer's not involved anymore?
They won't. They get snaky about it sometimes. So what you need is your lawyer to write to them and say, we're not acting at the moment.
Please send all correspondence
direct to our client. And her email address is this.
And then that way you can write letters to the other side, but it doesn't cost you a cent.
It costs them.
It costs them. Oh, no. Oh, no.
I'm sure none of our listeners would write big, long letters just to cause pain.
No.
It's not worth it. But remember, you're hoping to negotiate with this person.
Yes. Yeah.
Don't cheese them off.
No. So really, it's sounds simple, but people didn't realize, and I didn't realize, that you do have these options. You can just have a legal look lawyer who just has a little look at your situation at the beginning, tells you what you're probably entitled to, and then another time looks at what you're offering or looking at what you're about to sign, and that's it. And that would cost not much.
No.
Then you've got your step in, step out lawyer, where you are educated yourself like you are with the legal look, and you know a lot of what needs to be done, but that lawyer helps you when you need the help.
Well, if there's no way you can stand up and run an interim hearing yourself, if you feel you couldn't do that, then you get the lawyer to come on those bits.
Yeah. And then there's the first class where you just ride it along. But even if you do choose the first class lawyer approach where the lawyer does everything for you, I think mental health wise, if you know what's coming and you know what to expect, it does take a little bit of the fear of the unknown away as well.
I think so. I think knowing there is an end in sight. And anyone who's listening to this, every case I've ever done ends at some point. It's just a question of how long it takes and how much it costs you.
Yes.
So you will get out of it. But if you educate yourself, demolish your own bathroom or whatever, legal education only, disclaimer.
Yeah.
Then, you can be smart about it, and you'll look back. You won't only look back and go, gee, I'm glad I fought for what I was entitled to. But you'll also be able to say, gee, I'm glad I did a lot of that work myself because I'd rather this extra money in my pocket for the children.
And how many people in our webinars have said, oh my goodness, I've already spent $200,000. I've spent my entire savings and we're still not finished. And now I do have to do it on my own. So one of the things, if you are listening and you're at the beginning and you are thinking about choosing a lawyer, have a look at how much you are willing to spend on lawyers and let your lawyer know.
And don't waste it all.
And don't waste it at the beginning, because that is the biggest boo-boo we see, isn't it, Mum? People they spend all their money in those letters backwards and forwards in negotiating, but really the first initial dramas, but not the big stuff.
It's like going to the hospital, having a private room, having someone else do your meals, change the sheets, wheel you down to the surgery, and then you have to do your own surgery because you've run out of money.
Oh, gosh.
So, you do need to. How much are you prepared to spend, and at what stage are you going to need to spend
And if you want to use the plane analogy, and this would terrify me, you're sitting in first class, you're halfway to, I don't know, what's a lovely place? Halfway to Greece, you're about to land, and then the pilot comes in and says, really sorry, ma'am, but you've run out of money. You're going to have to land the plane. And that would be terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would rather be half piloting the plane in the air and not landing. Now, Mum, there was one other thing you really wanted to mention today to anyone listening who maybe can't afford a lawyer. Or they have got to this point where the pilots come in and said, you've got to land the plane. And basically the lawyer said, I can't act for you. You can't afford to pay me for the trial.
Yes.
What is it that you want people to know?
I want everyone to know that if there have been allegations of domestic violence or an order for family violence, that there's been violence in the relationship, the Family Court now, Federal Circuit and Family Law Act, Family Court of Australia, have changed the Family Law Act so that under Section 102, capital N, capital A, if you're in a DV situation or have been, you can have a lawyer appointed for you, a barrister and a solicitor usually, free for the purposes of the trial, so that the court will make an order that legal aid in your state will pay for a lawyer and a barrister to do the actual trial. And that's because they've recognised how awful it is for a person who's come out of a DV situation, family violence situation, to have to question their abuser, or worse, I think, be sitting in the witness box and be questioned by the abuser. And it's really interesting how many alleged abusive people don't want to have a lawyer. They say, I don't want it. I don't want to have it. I'm happy to cross-examine her or him. The court will insist. So they never get to have another go at you, and you don't have to. Because how can justice come out if you've got other things going on? So Section 102, capital N, capital A, and the court will appoint that if you ask them. They've got discretion, of course. If they think you can afford a lawyer, they probably won't.
Yeah.
But it's important. I think it's not being used enough because a lot of people don't know about it.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean they'll be doing your documents or anything like that. It just means they'll be there on the day to help with cross-examination and representing.
Pretty well. They get about 15 hours each. So in your plane analogy, or when the surgeon comes in and says, you haven't got enough money to continue, then you can say, but I get a free one from this. Yeah. And your next pilot does the landing for you, and the surgeon will finish off the operation.
But hopefully, if you have listened to this, then you will do the step in, step out, or the legal look, and then you won't run out of money at the end. And but like Mum said, a lot of people don't get all the way there, but Mum has noticed that a lot of people do run out of money before they get to the nitty-gritty.
Well, look at mediation, those people in our course.
So a lot of people in our court who do our course, the DIY Divorce Blueprint, are doing our course because they have run out of money and they wish they'd done it before.
And I think a big problem is this disclosure discovery thing, where your lawyer is being paid to ask for a document. Well, we want the bank statements from this month, this year, and then the other lawyer sends a link to that bank statement. So there's a lot of money lost in the disclosure process where you could have said that, this bank statement's missing, I'll ask for that bank statement.
Yes, yeah. So we're thinking smart about using lawyers,
We are.
especially in this time of, economic turmoil and inflation and cost of potatoes.
Everything's
cost
gone
of
up.
chocolate. No, chocolate hasn't gone up.
No,
though. Chocolate's always cheap. But so, yeah, I think if you want to be savvy about it, guys, try to just have a little think on this. Educate yourself. Listen to our podcast. Try and figure out what it is that you can do yourself. But, always get a lawyer to check before you sign anything. And you can come along and do our course. We are opening up the course in the next couple of weeks. It'll be open for enrollments. We've got a limited amount of seats, a limited amount of people that can come, or you can come to our free webinar and you can learn some stuff from Mum there.
Yeah.
But thank you, Mum, for giving your time to everybody today, and good luck to anybody who is choosing a lawyer
and using
a lawyer.
I love it.
I'll give that. Mum came up with that one. Good job, Mum. All right. Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Laura.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review, and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.